Here's a 2010 F-150 Platinum Edition 4-wheel drive. Maybe you were put off by the $50,000 price when it was brand new. A customer here, he bought it for $16,000. That was 1 year ago. It's still running fine. He admitted to me that he's only used the 4-wheel drive once on it, but I mean, if he needs to. One big advantage of 4-wheel drive when you're talking about used vehicles. Sure, the new ones cost a lot more 4-wheel drive. The resale value of the used 4-wheel drives is much higher. So even though you'll pay a little bit more, he still saved a ton. 16 versus $50,000. If he gets tired of it and he wants to sell it on, this thing will be so easy to sell, especially here in Tennessee. Guys in the Army are just dying to get their hands on a 4-wheel drive version. So even if you don't want a 4-wheel drive, it can be your advantage if you're planning on having it a while and then sell it on. You can get the 2-wheel drive versions a lot cheaper, but you're going to get a lot less for them when you sell it on. And they do come in handy if you live where it snows or you go hunting, you go out in the mud, you're not going to get stuck. Now, he's only spent about $2,000 in repairs since he bought it. The main one was the brakes kept wearing out. Now, he tried drilled and slotted rotors, and then he said they wear out even faster. That's why I advise people, don't do it, especially on a truck. That is a racing design. It's for multiple stopping and starting, racing around the track, hitting the brakes, letting go of the brakes at high speeds, so the brakes don't overheat. Now, you're generally not driving a truck like that. You hit the brakes once to stop it, and you're stopped. So they actually stop better without drilled and slotted because there's a bigger surface area. It's for continuous application and then acceleration. So don't waste your money on that on just about any vehicle unless you're racing it. And as strange as it sounds, from my experience, the best brake pads you can get for these things are Akebono, a Japanese company. Yeah, but they make ceramic pads. They cost a little bit more, but they're excellent pads. They can take the heat dissipation because they're ceramic. They don't eat up the rotors as bad, and they can last a really long time. So surprisingly enough, if you put Japanese pads on your Ford truck, you'll find they'll probably last longer, and the rotors will last longer too. And as we look under the hood, sure, it's dirty, but who cares? He had to change the VVT sensors on the engine, which is no big deal. He did it himself, bought them at Ford, and then it ran fine again. That's a typical problem with these engines, and hey, you can easily do it yourself. It's a simple job. Just watch my video on changing variable valve timing solenoids. They just bolt in and out, and the advantage of this particular design is, since it's older, you don't have to reprogram anything. On some of the new ones, you're going to have to reprogram it, and then you got to pay a guy like me. But on these older ones, you just pop them in, drive, and the computer figures it out itself. Another reason maybe buying a little bit older vehicle is a good thing. And here's a tip. This is a 2010 Triton 5.43V. The earlier ones had problems with the spark plugs breaking off, and Ford had to redesign them. So if you're looking at one older than 2010, you want to have the spark plugs checked. By now, most guys have swapped them out to Ford's new design. But let's say you got a low mileage one. Maybe an elderly couple owned it, and it's still got the original spark plugs. In that case, you want to be very careful, and you want to remove them all. Go to Ford and buy the new redesigned plugs and put them in. It was a design flaw. Ford knows it. If you happen to get an old one that's still got the original plugs, you want to do that now rather than later, because if you do have a problem and they blow out, it can ruin the threads. You might have to put new cylinder heads in. In the case of if they're in there and you can get them out with a long extension bar and a socket, do it now. Buy one that's 2010 or newer. They don't have that problem. Now, the other thing that went out was the alternator. Typical Ford alternator. It lasted about 100,000 miles. You expect that in a Ford. He does his own stuff. So he went to AutoZone. It was about $100 and came with a lifetime warranty. He'll never have to buy another one. And there's AutoZones everywhere. You're not paying me to say this, that's just the truth, you know? I got stuff in them, and if you break down in California, you just give them your phone number, and then they'll look it up, and you get another alternator free. So, hey, worry free there. Now, there is an error on the oil cap. You can see it says 5W20. Even Ford admits you 5W30 because it lubricates better. Now, in some of the modern cars, that's sacrilegious. You can't, because they need a super lightweight oil to lubricate everything. but this is a classic V8. You really want to use a 5W30 in this. Now, you might think this owner's a bit of a fanatic. He bought it used, and he did notice when he took the valve covers off, there was some varnish in it, meaning that the previous owner didn't change the oil enough. So what does he do? He changes the oil a lot. He changes the oil every 2,000 or 3,000 miles. He has a very good philosophy on this. He knows the guy abused it, didn't change the oil enough because of the varnish. You may not realize it, but the bottom of your engine, where the pistons bolt with a connecting rod to the crankshaft, there's bearings. They're thin metal, and that's what it rides on. If you have an abused vehicle, those bearings could be worn a little, and it's insidious because you won't hear anything until it's too late and the rods start knocking. Then you have to rebuild the engine. If you change the oil a lot, if there was any wear, it's going to really make wear less, and you do have to consider that the rod bearings are where? On the bottom of the engine. Okay, where does the most gunk go? The bottom of the engine. So it only makes sense. Oil is cheap, engines are expensive. And in doing so, this truck is treating him well. It runs like a clock, shouldn't have any engine problems. And I mean, this guy's pretty smart with his trucks. His previous one was a plain two-wheel drive Ford that he bought for $8,000, got hit by deer, and made a few thousand on that by getting it fixed at a Maaco and pocketing the difference, and then selling it for the same price that he paid for it, $8,000. Just think, the original owner of this thing lost $34,000 when he sold it. He bought a used Ford, and not only did he break even on buying it and selling it, but he made thousands when it got hit by a deer by getting it fixed cheaper. He didn't care. It still looked okay, obviously, because he sold it for $8,000, but he actually made money on the deal, where the guy who bought this lost $36,000. Big reason why you might think about a used truck next time. The other advantage of used is, got the chrome tow hooks, the interior's got the immaculate leather. Now, it is 11 years old, so you know the driver's seat's gonna have holes in it. That's just Ford leather, but got tons of space inside, true room for 3 people in the back, heat and air conditioning too. For a lot less money, you get all this luxury. You save a ton over even a stripped down new one, which doesn't have anything that you want. There's nothing wrong with getting a used F-150 truck. They still have a lot of stuff you can do yourself, like this owner has. And even if you don't find a mechanic like me, there's so many guys that know how to work on Fords. It's not like you're taking it to a Maserati dealer. It's going to be a $4,000 tune-up, you know? They're common vehicles people know how to work on, and parts are dirt cheap. Look at that $100 alternator. Try that with any modern car. It's going to be a lot more than that. Now you might say, this big old thing, what, a gas hog? Well, it gets 22 miles a gallon on a highway. You can't argue it with a huge vehicle like this. Hey, check it out. A sunroof and a pickup truck. What's the world coming to? And if you really want the height of redneck luxury, an electric window to get into the bed, so you can throw things in the bed while you're going down the road and don't have to slow down. Now here's some real world advice on flex fuel. His gas mileage on his normal commuting went from 20 miles a gallon to 12 when he tried out flex fuel. So he doesn't use it anymore. Now, of course, it ran perfectly fine. The thing is, ethanol burns cleaner. But there's a big problem with ethanol, is that it has less British thermal units, BTUs, than gasoline. About 20% less. But he got a lot worse than 20% worse gas mileage, because it gets really complicated. Now, the speeding freaks love it because you get more horsepower. It just puts out more zing the way that it burns faster and cleaner. But he didn't feel like going from 20 to 12 miles a gallon average gas mileage, so that was the end of that. The fuel's only a little bit cheaper. It does burn cleaner, yes. If you're going to get that worse gas mileage, it doesn't really make any sense. Except to the farmers who are growing the corn, so sorry there, farmers, but I'm not a fan of E85 either. So if you're looking for a good used truck, especially a 4x4, hey, if you can find an F-150 like this, get a good used one, you can really save a lot of money and still have a nice looking truck. Styles haven't changed all that much. They're pickup trucks. They got boxes in the back, you know. They can do all they want on the front ends. They're still pickup trucks. They stay in style. This one still rides in style. Why spend 60 to 80 grand today on a new one? Let somebody else take all that loss and get it when there's a lot of life left in it. Here is a real live 2022 Mustang Mach-E GT. Now, of course, realize they're not giving them away. Now, the Mustang Mach-E, their whole thing, they said they start at $45,000. Forget that. This was $75,000. I have to say, to Ford's benefit, they didn't rake him over the coals, and they didn't say we're going to add this, this, and this. He paid the list price that was on the internet. So he knew what he was getting into, and they didn't sell him a bunch of crap extra. They were honest about that at least. And I know they're always changing things. They're trying to make it so you can't resell them. But if he wanted to resell this one right now, he could probably make 20 grand. But he likes the car, so he's not. But Ford's trying to say, just like GM, they're trying to say, well, you can't sell the car for a year, or we'll void the warranty, blah, 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 blah. They haven't actually done it yet. But he paid list price, and he got it. And he didn't get any rim-arounds with it. But on the other hand, he ordered it in September and he just got it. So it was 8 months before he got the vehicle. Now, of course, it's a fully electric car. And you'd think, hey, the fan's running. Well, batteries and motors have to be cooled. You'll often hear fans running because they have to keep the batteries and the generator from overheating. Now, this has the extended range battery. He was getting 240-mile range, but he just took it in 3 days ago and had software updates done that they recalled it for. And the range is now 265. But, and he warned me about this, once he goes over 70 miles an hour, he starts losing range a lot faster. And he also found something else out. There's a power band we'll show later when we're driving it. When you're going under 70 and you floor it, it will start blocking acceleration power. Normally you'll have full acceleration power, but he noticed over 70, the bars don't go as far. And some of them get blocked with gray. I'm assuming Ford is limiting top speed, top acceleration. Realize this is an electric vehicle. It has 600 pound-feet of torque. That's a lot of torque. They're worried people are going to lose acceleration, I guess, going over 70, start spinning stuff around. Somehow they're limiting it with software. Realize that the top speed of this thing is 124 miles an hour. That is obviously computer limited. You can certainly make it go a lot faster. They don't want to make it go a whole lot faster. I mean, they're being logical here. You know, who needs to go more than 124 miles an hour, right? I mean, the Teslas can go over 200 miles an hour, the real fancy ones. But you're going to lose a lot of power. They're a lot more dangerous. They're making this an actual driving car and not some muscle car that's going to be going to the drag strip. No, that's not what this is about. And of course, you techies are going to go, wow, check this out. This shows on his trip how he used energy. 4% of it was used in climate use because the AC is on, it's hot. 90% we use for driving, 5% accessories, and 1% on the external temperature. You can see it's got a really nice dash there. And we'll go from scratch here and turn the power on. Play some interesting music. Now it's started. Now I do have to say one thing. I am artistically disappointed with that startup. When they brought me that Ford Bronco, it had the coolest startup with atoms, and then they're molding to make a Bronco in the desert. They had phenomenal graphics. To me, this is a little bit on the basic side for their fancy electric Mustang. Of course, being an electric vehicle, it's got all kinds of plugs. It's got charging. You can just charge your phone, sticking it on there. And it does have a gear shift, even though it's electric, and there really isn't a transmission. Now, I do have to say, Ford's being a little bit sneaky here. Let's look in the driver's door pillar here. What does it say? It says, manufactured by Ford Motor Company. And you can see, they even have it kind of hidden back here. They don't mention a single thing that all of these are built in Mexico. Not one word says this baby was made in Mexico, but they all are. Now, when we open the front, there's no engine. It has a frunk. It's got a little bit of space in here. You can put stuff in it. Now, it's a modern car, so it's got that new refrigerator in it. And speaking of that, you can see here, using the AC, uses up 5% of your range. It has to, because it's using energy. Now, it doesn't say it anywhere on the vehicle, but it is all-wheel drive. With 600 pound-feet of torque, it has these massive Brembo brakes. Those suckers are gigantic. Now, you notice the rotors aren't drilled. They're vented inside, but they're not drilled. Realize this is a 4,500 pound car, because batteries weigh a lot. They're real heavy, right? You drill the holes, they dissipate heat even better. They also wear out really fast. I realize this has the regenerative braking to use the power over. That's how it gets the range, even though it weighs so much and has so much power. So the brakes aren't used nearly as much in a regular car. But if you did have slotted and drilled discs on it, realize one thing. They're also noisy as can be. They get really noisy. Plus, you'll often get pedal vibration too. So, unless you're racing around, You don't want to do that to this. Plus, let's face the facts. You're not going to be dragging people in these things that have muscle cars because this thing's speed limited at 124. Those guys will do 180, 200. They blow you off the road. Hey, it's got 4 doors. Decent space in the back. He's got it down. A lot of room in the trunk. Hide stuff here so people can't see it. One of the coolest things it has is, check it out. It's got a glass top. It's Gorilla Glass, just like my phone, only a lot bigger. No more worrying about bird crap ruining the paint on your roof. It's Gorilla Glass. Wash it and wipe it off and it'll look good forever. Now hopefully they got good quality control in their Gorilla Glass, but hey, let's face it, Corning's been making stuff like that for a long time. It generally holds up pretty well. It looks good, and it'll probably look good for quite some time. Now, if you're thinking about buying an electric car of any sort, this included, here's one caveat that I have to give you. Unfortunately, these guys do not give out repair information for electric vehicles. It's a different technology, right? So people have to learn, but check this out. Here's my all data system that I use, that I pay for every year. I'm a mechanic to fix cars. Normally there'll be thousands of pages of information. There's practically nothing in this. Let's look at electric drive. This is an electric vehicle, right? Here's the only thing that it has. A technical service bulletin, and only one. Okay, on normal cars, I will have thousands of pages of data. It would show, if you're not a Prius, here's the electric system, here's how it works, here's how you can take it apart and replace the motor. This? No, they don't give you any of that information. Now, Teslas are even worse. There's no information on all data for a Tesla. I can't get any information at all. Now, this thing does have an OBD port. You go under here, there's the port, it just plugs right in. So we'll do auto scan here. And unfortunately, this scan tool won't scan it, so let's get another one. So we're trying a different scan tool. It detected it. Now I read the VIN number, but it can't access it either. So no go. Now he took it to the Ford dealer and they were able to access information with their special Ford computer. They're basically going like Tesla. They're not making it easy for anybody to work on it or get information how to fix it. So if you buy one of these, you know I'm not a fan of these insurance plans. In this case, buy the extended service plan. He paid $2,500 and it's 8 years or 80,000 miles. You better have that. Because these are made in Mexico, they're new vehicles. If something goes wrong, the sky's the limit. It's like when you go to the doctor. How much is this going to cost, Doc? Oh, don't worry about it. I'll send you a bill in the mail. And they're at that level now because I can't access this information even with my $7,000 scan tool. And even if I access the information, what does it mean? I can't tell because the data systems don't include these. Well, it includes it, but it doesn't really give you any information. So, you know, what difference does it make? Make sure you buy that extended plan, 8 years or 80,000 miles. Really, if you're one of those people that's going to buy something like this and you're going to put 40, 50,000 miles a year on it, then you're on your own after 80,000 miles. Realize that. But that said, let's take it for a drive. We'll put it in drive, and away we go. Realize just like a Tesla, it does have regenerative braking, so you take your foot off the gas, look, it stopped itself by itself, so you gotta get used to that. Now I'm gonna wait until I get to our little drag strip, but I can tell by stepping on the gas. This thing is insane. 600 pound-feet of torque is quite a bit. Also realize it is a crossover vehicle. This isn't a regular Mustang. The regular Mustangs handle a lot stiffer. This isn't a race car. The handling isn't as good as it will be in a Mustang that's set up for racing around. And it'll take a while to get used to taking your foot off the gas and having it stop itself. But of course, with the regenerative braking and regular brakes, you want to stop this thing? Man, it stops on a dime. And realize it's all-wheel drive too, which is going to make handling and stopping a breeze. So we'll get to our little drag strip in the sky here. I can feel it coming on. We're going to do it from a complete stop though. We'll get around the bend here. All right, let's step on the gas full blast and see what happens. It takes off like a rocket. we're already going 90 miles an hour. And let's say you want to pass somebody. Here we're going 40, we'll floor it. Look how fast it passes people. This is a little rocket ship. At least up to 126 miles an hour. Then it's speed limited. And even though it's not a Mustang sports car, it's a Mustang E crossover SUV, hey, it's got decent handling. It's not racetrack handling, but you can take these twisties pretty fast. You don't feel like you're losing control at all. It's got all the traction control, lane departure stuff on it. The owner showed me an odd thing. When you're driving down a highway, you can fold them in while you're going 80 miles an hour or whatever, 60. That's not a good thing because the mirrors and the lane departure system on there, now it does have cameras there too, but they're at a different angle. And he said it really screws up the lane departure and the warning system because now the sensors, as you can see on the end, are pointed in a different direction. I'm assuming that's a mistake with Ford, and I'll have to fix that. There's no way you should be able to retract those mirrors while you're driving down the road at higher speeds. You notice they haven't automatically stuck themselves back out. They just stay there until I push the button. Then they go back out. You don't have to have your feet on the brake, and it sits there waiting for the light by itself. And of course, you're not going to find anybody who doesn't love that 600 pound-feet of torque. It's insane. It's got normal car features like a normal turn signal that normally clicks. This isn't some crazy spaceship that you have to be an alien to understand how to operate it. Everything are just regular controls like a regular car. Yes, they're made in Mexico. No, you're never going to find any Scotties, at least as it stands today, that can work on them because not only can we not access the information on the car, we can't access any information on our data systems either. So, it's going to be going to the El Fordo dealer and paying a fortune unless you buy one of their 8-year, 80,000 mile extended warranty plans, which in this case I would say you really have to with a car like this. Okay, the guy forked out 75 grand for this car, right? 2,500, spend it, baby, spend it. It's fast, there's no arguing that. And it's fun to drive. And interestingly enough, he just took it in, realized these are new vehicles, they're going to have teething problems. He had a software update done. They updated the software and his range went from 240 to 265. I've seen people with Teslas, after their software update, the range went down. This went up. So at least they're headed in the right direction. The only direction I wish they'd go to, start making these things in Detroit instead of Mexico. All right, here we have a 2016 Ford Focus. I'm going to tell you the truth about them. This particular one being a 2016, it's covered under their warranty that they either have to fix the transmission correctly or they have to buy back the car. And Ford's claim they bought back thousands of the cars at an average of $17,000 a car, which I find to be total nonsense because every customer I had that got offered a buyback, they'd offer them $2 grand, $2,500. So I wouldn't believe Ford's figures. But here's the history of the car, and it might surprise you. They're not as bad as some people think. Now, the Focus was designed as a world car. They actually build it all over the world. Germany, United States, Taiwan, you name it, all kinds of places. It was designed by basically the Germans and the British were behind the design. It's a rather European design. Everybody that knows anything about cars knows that Ford had to recall them and either fix the automatic transmissions or buy the car back. One of the reasons this occurred isn't really that they were built wrong. It's that they were fixed wrong. This does have the dual automatic transmission that has 2 clutches inside it, but you don't have a clutch pedal. The computer shifts it. Now, he had problems with this. He bought it used and the transmission acted up. So he took it to the dealer. Then they reprogrammed it. But, of course, that didn't fix the problem. So he took it back and they reprogrammed it again. But then he did research and found out they either got to fix the tranny or they got to buy the car back. It is a dual clutch system. They put actual new clutches in the transmission and they reprogrammed the car. And since then, it's run perfectly fine. Here is the rub of these dual clutch transmissions in this Ford. It's an automatic transmission, but it has 2 clutches and no clutch pedal. The computer operates the clutches electrically and hydraulically. So instead of you stopping on a clutch with your foot, the computer's doing that so you can engage it from gear to gear. The automatic transmission does it by itself. Anybody who's mechanical can pull the tranny off, put in new clutches and put it back in. But it won't work right because it has to be reprogrammed by various states with a fancy Ford computer to reset it so it shifts correctly. if you just took it apart, put in new clutches and put it together, it would shift like crap because it's got to be reset. The computer system has to be reset. If it isn't reset and reprogrammed, it won't shift right. That's why originally, of course, the dealers want to save money. 2 times they said, oh, we just need to reprogram it. Well, reprogramming is perfectly fine when you put new clutches in and then reprogram it. You have to do that. But if the clutches themselves are physically worn, you could reprogram until the cows come home and it's not going to work right because the clutch is physically worn out and there's 2 of them. And that, as far as I'm concerned, was the main problem with these cars, was that idiots were working on the car, and even at the dealerships, they try to tell people, oh, well, we'll just reprogram it, that'll fix it, because they just want to push buttons. They don't have to pull the tranny off, big job, costs a lot of money, right? They kind of added to the problems by not saying, okay, yeah, the clutch is worn out. Instead of, if it was still under warranty, they'd say, oh, it just needs reprogramming. No, it didn't. Then everybody thinks, well, they reprogrammed, it didn't work right, it's junk. And then eventually they settle the deal where they either got to fix these things for free and put new clutches and reprogram them, or they got to buy the car back. And as per usual, Ford lowballed people. I've had customers with them, and they'd offer them $2 grand, $2,500 for the car. Ford claimed they paid $17,700 on average for the ones they bought back, and they supposedly bought back thousands of them, but I wouldn't believe their figures on what they offered, because every person I saw, they offered them peanuts for the car. I'll tell you one thing that kind of amazes me. I wonder, what happens to the ones they buy back? They never tell anybody. Like, do they ship them to Europe or Poland or someplace, or South America, and then unload it to those people after they bought them back? They never tell you what they do when they buy them back. But regardless, this one now runs like a charm, because they did replace it. They did reprogram it right, and you get over 35 miles a gallon on this thing driving around. The dual clutch transmissions can get phenomenal gas mileage because the computers can shift it for economy, for power, whatever you want to set it up for, and get really good gas mileage because of their design. They have many speeds, and they can shift for gas mileage if you have it on economy, or if you have it for speed, they'll shift a little bit later and have more pickup. Now, as we look under the hood, 93,000 miles on it. Does it burn oil? No. One of the reasons that it also gets good gas mileage, it isn't just the transmission. As you can see here, there's the high pressure fuel pump. This is a gasoline direct injection engine. The GDI system sprays gas directly into the engine. It's highly efficient. That's how you can get good gas mileage. Now, he did have to replace the fuel pump. You can see he's replaced this pump. It's a high pressure pump, but he did it himself, and it only cost him about $100. Now, check it out. Fuel pump up here, easy to get to for $100. Who cares? Now, originally, you'd have to pay a whole bunch more money because you have to buy it at the dealer and yada yada. They mark them up and everything. But since these are world cars, they're made all over the place. There's parts available all over the place, and there's a lot of aftermarket parts that work fine. Now, of course, lots of places, especially Europe, they drive standard transmission cars, so they don't even care about a dual clutch. They got a regular one they drive themselves. But here in the United States, everybody drives automatic. So it had to make one that have an automatic. Phenomenal gas mileage, they got decent pickup too. It's just that they left a horrible taste in people's mouths when the trannies broke. Ford would just say, oh, too bad, it's out of warranty. But then after the class action suit and everything, Ford settled, so they're either fix them for free or buy the car back. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.